Ladies and gentlemen, here we go with our first game. It's going to be Nightend versus Inka, QXG versus Fnatic. These two players being pitted together on our first map, Antigua Shipyard Orb. This is some religious guacamole.
Religious guacamole?
Yeah.
Well, you know, it is holy guacamole indeed. I know where you're going with that, Andre.
I'm actually going to switch it up from now on. I'm not going to say holy guacamole anymore.
Say religious
I'm not even going
guacamole.
to say holy guacamole, which is guacamole is how you say it if you're in the Latin countries. I'm actually going to say from now on.
From now on.
Holy raviolis.
Holy raviolis. You know what? I like that. Ravioli are pretty delicious.
I love ravioli.
Get some cheese-filled ravioli. Do you put beef in yours?
I put beef in mine.
I like the cheese stuff. Sometimes you put some spinach in there. Spinach and cheese.
Spinach, cheese.
Really good.
Sausage. Oh, baby.
Some pretty good stuff, man. Get some spice in there.
Well, speaking of holy ravioli, we have an awesome match coming in here right now. Fnatic MSI Nightend spawning here as the blue Protoss in the 3-cock position on Antigua Shipyard.
Yeah, and we're actually going to be into a pretty standard game here because on Antigua Shipyard you do have that small ramp leading up into the main. That's generally the most important thing to look for in a map for PvP. And of course, with the changes, of course, we are not going to be able to see something like a 4-gate, essentially because one force field on the ramp cannot completely stop a 4-gate. You cannot warp in above that force field. Yeah. So. You know, we'll probably see just a more standard tech-oriented, maybe macro game here between these players. I think with the natural being laid out the way it is, with just one big ramp coming down to that natural, I feel like, you know, an early expansion build might actually be feasible, despite the fact that it is PvP. Yeah,
we're going to see a lot of different strategies coming on both these players. You know, there is actually a way you can fast expansion and just use a forge to cannon off and be completely safe in that early game stage as well. We'll see. I'm highly doubtful that we see that, but I have seen that type of play come out of someone like Artosis back in the Season 1 where he did that against Grubby and was able to really get a huge advantage in his PvP.
Yeah, you have to be really careful, of course, you know, with, I feel like Blink is going to be just the most standard play. That's what so many Protosses go for nowadays, but of course you have to be really careful about timings available too because Mortals are really good. Mortals are really, really good. So if you go for Blink and your opponent just goes for that robo play, you know, with that 6-ranger Mortal, it can be very difficult to make anything work. Blink takes quite a while to get, so you have to be very careful about, you know, taking map control, containing your opponent, and having just very good unit positioning. And overall, you just can't make any mistakes. PvP is a very, very unforgiving matchup. Sometimes one missed force field, something as minor as that, can just end the game. We do see both players going for that double gas, though, but very predictable. It makes sense. You really want to be able to get that tech up and running as soon as possible in PvP. Yeah,
this is completely a standard style coming out from both these players. It looks like both of them will choose to tech. I would like to see some sort of like 1-gate robo now that both these players have scouted each other. Sees the second gas go down. Now a little bit of a deviation. Inka is actually getting a second gateway out right now instead of getting the earlier stalker. And look at that. He's getting a sentry first.
Yeah, it's understandable just to play it safe. I mean, he does have the scouting information since he has his probe in his opponent's base. So maybe, I mean, he did see a single chrono on that cyber core for Inka, so maybe he's just worried about some early pressure here from Inka, wants to make sure he'll have those forces available. Now he's actually switching over to chroning that gateway out, trying to get that stalker out as soon as possible. Go take some map control. And there we go. We are going to see the 1-gate robo from Nightend. I think we'll have to see if he adds on additional gateways. But with the strength of Immortals and with the strength of force fields on ramps, I feel like 1-gate robo expand could end up being a very standard play in PvP.
Yeah. I think this is going to be a very strong build. Of course, a lot of times how you beat something like fast charge lots is going to be just deny any form of them getting to you. So you get good SimCity in the front here. You can put like gateways, pylons and everything, and then just be behind that wall. And then the only other thing you have to worry about is Blink Stalkers, which is not easy. There's no counter to it, I would say, but they can be a lot more manageable as long as you deny, let's say, observers all around your base. So I think something like, a little bit of lag here from Nightend, but something like a fast robo play could be the new standard in these PvPs in 1.4.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, the benefit is that you can get that really early observer out, go scout out your opponent. If you do see something like Blink coming, you can just chrono out as many Immortals as possible. And if you get out a couple Immortals in time, you should be able to defend pretty easily. Yeah, you'll have to delay that Nexus going down, but you can actually defend pretty successfully. He actually did throw down those 2 additional gateways, though, so Nightend is actually playing very, very safely in this game. not going to go for something like a 1-gate robo. Wants to make sure he'll have enough units that he won't possibly die to any type of all-in from Inka, which is what he has to worry about, of course. Meanwhile, it looks like Inka went ahead and threw down a robo of his own.
Yeah, so he's playing towards that robo style as well. Neither of these players, I guess, going for that blink stalker method because it was changed by 20 seconds. Not a huge deal. 140 seconds to 100.
I thought it was 30, but
was it 30?
Yeah, I think it went to 170.
Yeah, you might be right. 170 seconds. But still, you know, that can be kind of reduced just with the chrono boost, of course. So I don't know. It's looks like we're back, so let's go ahead and get into that. Barely by the skin of our teeth, we are back. Nightend is good.
Wow, don't scare. I have no idea. I hope it doesn't happen again. I really don't want to have some disaster happen here, but hopefully it will just stay being fine. Right now we're on 3-gate robo versus just 2-gate robo. So Inka just playing a little bit more economically focused here. You will be able to throw down that Nexus a little bit earlier than Nightend. But of course that robo is later, so you will have this observer out later. And we do have an Immortal on the way from Nightend. Unfortunately, he is a little bit supply blocked right here, but that pylon will be done in about 5 seconds. You know,
important to note, the big thing is that Inka got these sentries out before his opponent. He has 117 energy on this one sentry and 80 on the other one. Let's look at Nightend's. He has 105. So there's a lot more force fields coming out for Inka than his opponent, and that just gives him the ability, if he ever wants to go and take this expansion. He can easily force field that bottom ramp with just, I think he only needs two force fields to completely stop anything.
I think it might be 3. Yeah. But I could be wrong. He does have the Observer, though, in Inka's base right now, so Nightend's going to see what's going on, but he's going up to Colossus tech right now. That's what worries me. And it could be a good move, because with that choke point, with that ramp, you can just use Colossi to defend at that spot and make it really difficult for your opponent to actually move up into that type of a choke point with all that splash damage going out. But, of course, with these 6-range Immortals, it's going to be a lot more difficult to micro Colossi versus Immortals, especially until you have that range upgrade. And look at that, a Warp Prism on the way from Inka. This could be a great move. Not only, you know, does Inka like to do this quite a lot. He very often goes for these plays where he brings a Warp Prism into his opponent's mirror line, warps in a couple Zealots, but it's also useful for moving around your Immortals. Immortals are pretty slow and mobile, and when you're fighting against Colossi, if all of a sudden you can lift up 2 Immortals, move them closer towards your opponent's Colossi, drop them behind their army, and start target firing Colossi down, you can get a huge advantage.
Yeah, you think Colossus have a lot of HP, but just wait until a 50 damage dealing unit gets right next to him, and all of a sudden your Colossus feels absolutely worthless. Nightend does have 2 Immortals, though, so he is having a very heavy robo-centric army. I do like this, especially with the Immortals having that extra range.
Yeah, will help him out a lot. Now, the Nexus is already halfway done for Nightend, so he's gone ahead and gone for that macro play much earlier than Inka. Inka's setting up to be able to take that Nexus. He has the probe in place, has a pylon on the way, but it's not just yet. And, of course, Nightend does have vision of this. He has the Observer over there, so he sees his opponent doesn't have an expansion yet. What that essentially means for him is that, of course, he spent 400 minerals on a Nexus that his opponent has spent on an army instead, and thus his army's going to be smaller. So he has to play very defensively right now, very carefully. He can't afford to lose that Colossus.
No, he can't. And it looks like he's going to do a multi-pronged attack going into the natural, and at the same time, it looks like he might want to use this Warp Prism. No, he's actually going to go in. What is he doing with this Warp Prism? I'm not sure completely. He's just gauging where all these units go based on this one Observer. I do like what Inka is actually doing.
Yeah, Nightend's being very careful, keeping a lot of his army pretty close, but he's not leaving any of it in the main. And here comes the Warp Prism now. It should go for the drop, and it looks like Nightend sees it immediately. He's moving his whole army over to try to help defend. It looks like they're just going to target down 1 pylon and then leave. Definitely a good move. You can just pick off anything you can. And now, of course, the army's out of position. And nice Force Field goes up on the ramp. Of course, they'll be able to break that down with the Colossus, but it does delay the amount of it delays that army from getting down there. That's just extra hit points taken away from those shields on that Nexus. It just creates more of an opportunity later on that Inka can go and exploit to try to pick off that Nexus.
Looks like the Observer will be taken out. Nightend critically needs to take that out and will drop Inka quite far back. I don't think he can continue on with this. You know, we haven't seen any reinforcements come into this army for quite a long time. Inka should know that Nightend has had a lot of time to just mass up in a lot of units. Look at that, 4 Immortals in this entire army. And Inka trying to do some harassment over here, but I highly doubt it'll work.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough when you have that Observer, of course, that was so unbelievably important that Nightend killed the Observer of Inka. Now he has a vision of that Warp Prism, had vision of the army as well, so he's able to have his army in position to defend. Inka, meanwhile, did take his expansion, but he kept his probe count up a little bit better than Nightend did.
Yeah,
he was keeping that probe production up. Yeah, I mean, look at that. You really would have expected this situation, since Nightend took his expansion earlier, that he would have the higher probe count, but he was actually cutting probes for way too long. They're playing very defensively, and now he's actually going to be behind on the economy.
Yep, we do see again those Warp Prisms coming into play, and a little bit of an attack coming up in the center of the map. Will Nightend actually commit all the way? That's going to be the big question. I think it would actually help him. Thermal Lance is finished, but here we go. An actual Colossus coming here. Oh my god, the Immortal! No, it doesn't drop over him. I thought the Immortal would have dropped directly on top of that one Colossus, because the Immortal can take out a Colossus one-on-one.
Oh, of course, it's actually pretty darn efficient. He's got to be careful here. This Colossus is doing damage to that Immortal. Inka needs to worry about his micro. There we go, picking that up. Looks like Nightend might gear up to go for that attack at the front, though. Of course, no anti-air. He's just lowering down his units, trying to target fire down. That Colossus doesn't quite get it, though. Loses his Immortal, unfortunately. Nightend is trying to gear up. He's getting that probe up on the upper ground to make sure there's no, like, sentries holding that ramp. Nothing there. There are 2 Colossi, though. So, I mean, Nightend could have attacked when he had Colossus range, and Inka didn't. Instead, he waited. He just kind of left his army sitting around here. And that allowed Inka not only to get his second Colossus out, but also to finish that Colossus range in time. And the third Colossus is on the way. So if Nightend waits for this next Colossus of his to arrive, it will just be three Colossus versus 3 Colossus. Of course, Nightend does have the advantage with all those Immortals, though, but he's going to have perfect target firing if he wants to win this engagement. Yes,
he does. The big problem is, you know, this War Prism is just creating so much chaos. Now finally the third Colossus is coming over here. Here's the big engagement. Force fields are coming up, but I don't know who's going to win this.
He's moving forward with the Colossi. The problem is Nightend does not have his in place. There we go. Finally, those 2 Colossi get into the battle, but they're not target firing well. They're attacking individual Zealots instead of doing splash damage. Plus, the Immortals are just on attack move right now, attacking Zealots, but he takes out the rest of the Zealots, and Inka is losing the rest of his army. He doesn't have any response to these Immortals and Colossi. It looks like his army was just way out of position there, way too much for Nightend. Those 4 Immortals did so much damage. It was absolutely unbelievable. Look how quickly they take out that Nexus. The Natural is now, oh, not quite there. It is now gone for Inka, and Nightend has somehow taken a huge advantage despite being so behind coming into the mid-game.
Yeah, those Immortals really were such key. They killed every single one of those Stalkers so fast. Now focusing down on the Colossus. Inka needs to back up, but no. GG comes out, and Nightend is going to take game number 1. And 1-0 for Nightend. Inka is going to fall down, and that timing push, let's break it down a little bit, because that could be really kind of confusing. We saw that Inka had a huge economic advantage, 41 probes to 31. How was it, Jake, that he was able to get just crushed at that last attack?
Well, there were a couple things that happened. First off, Inka did go for that drop with the Warp Prism. Now remember, first off, that's not just investment in money. Yeah, he had to spend money on that Warp Prism, also on the units that he built over there with that Warp Prism, or the units that he took over, that Immortal that he no longer had with his army. It's also an investment in time for your robotics facility. In PvP, time on your robotics facility is extremely important. You need to have it producing those Colossi or Immortals pretty much constantly to stay even. And we saw in that last engagement, the 4 Immortals that Nightend had with his army made an unbelievable difference when they were engaging, even though his Colossi weren't even attacking pretty much anything. Like 1 stray Zealot was off to the side that they were attacking most of that fight, and he was still able to take it with those 4 Immortals.
He was at the same number of Colossus that entire battle, but he had 4 extra Immortals. That represents a lot of uses with that robotics facility. And we're going to go back to the build. One gate, Robo, and then 2 gates, or how Inka did it, 2 gates, then Robo. So additionally, we have that time in there. He was able to get the Observer. But biggest thing of all, the Warp Prism, and not only that, he wasn't actually using the robotics facility for a little bit of that game. And it really shows with those 4 Immortals coming there, bearing down on all those Colossus, all those Stalkers, and literally just obliterating everything that existed for Inka's army. It was just awesome stuff to see. We're going to go into game number 2. It's going to be on Terminus SE. Join us there. We'll be back after this break.